بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the master of the day of judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the master of the day of judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in his path until the last day. It is said that when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was drawing closer to the month of Ramadan, he would make dua indicating its anticipation. Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab wa Sha'ban wa baligna Ramadan, that, oh Allah, make blessed for us the month of Rajab, the month that we just saw pass upon us. The month of Sha'ban, the month that's onset is upon us now, and allow for us to reach the month of Ramadan. Embedded within this dua is a notion that is critical to understand as we prep for Ramadan. Because the Prophet ﷺ's dua is not just about the inculcant of excitement and anticipation of this blessed month. It's not just about a readiness and a preparation of days that exist in the dunya we sense. But embedded within the dua that is aspirational, the idea of reaching Ramadan, also is the logical conclusion that you perhaps might not make it there. And it's not to be a morbid thought, but to have a thought that is deeply embedded within our spiritual tradition, that does not see death as something that is finite, but a means, a transition to yet another realm of existence. And may Allah make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds. In the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal, when He speaks to people of faith, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, He says to them, ittaqullah, that have taqwa of Allah. And then He says, وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ, and let each soul, each individual, look to what they've put forth for tomorrow. Ramadan in its essence is about so many things. It's about fasting as an act that the Quran says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So it gives you the ritual, and then one of the instances where it speaks now about an act, but also just immediately tells you what its purpose is, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you can attain this thing of consciousness. In the first pages of the Quran, which is a text that's very conscious of itself, it knows that it's a book, and it tells you that it's a book. And it says that it is a huda, a guidance for the muttaqeen, the people of taqwa. That consciousness is distinct from a lot of what we understand within a prism of modernity of consciousness to be. Mindfulness, contemplation, whatever it is. But ours adds in a variable, an element, that it's a consciousness rooted in morality. And you have in the presence of that consciousness the understanding of the existence of the divine. You have the understanding of the reality that is an afterlife, a world beyond this one. It's not just in the vacuum where I walk down the street and I say, oh yes, I see things around me. But it's drawing me towards a place of recognition that yields a higher mode of ethical conduct Because I'm aware, not just in a worldly sense, but also in an otherworldly sense. So when the nafs looks to see what it is set forth for tomorrow, it's being done sandwiched between a call to consciousness twice. O people of faith, have taqwa of Allah, and let each soul look to see what it is put forth tomorrow, and then again after it. Allah says that have taqwa of Allah. It's a challenge to have aspiration to yield these things. But breaking out of default settings becomes critical. Awareness is not just about my physical vision. We want to start to attach definitions to terminologies that we've had relationships with, but don't necessarily gain as much as we could because it's ambiguous what it means conceptually. Why would you chase after something if you don't know what it is? Why would you give it a worth or a priority? Do you even want this thing that is taqwa? Is it something that you strive for, that you thirst for, something that you feel like is going to be what gives you a distinction? You can link taqwa as a concept to the spiritual act that is tawbah. And you want to unlearn for a moment, perhaps your own socialized understanding of who God is. Because a lot of you learned the words fard and haram before anybody taught you how to reflect on Allah, let alone gave you an indication of who it is that you worship. You learned perhaps how to follow or pray the sunnah prayers before you knew who sunnah it was that you were following. And that becomes hard now because if you have a conceptualization of the divine that's rooted in only an externalized framework, and this consciousness is something that's rooted in an understanding and recognition of the divine, that presence is not going to elicit empowerment or strength. It's going to create intimidation and trepidation. I'm going to be in a space where I just move and walk on eggshells, or I just stay stuck. Think about even what it is that we find in the world today. Individuals that are clearly moved by everything other than an overt presence of a moral compass that's guiding. How is it that we have soldiers lined at borders across countries? Their sole purpose to just give men of desire more to pursue power and wealth and things that leave them unsatiated. How do you wake up on the day of Jummah and you decide that somehow today I believe that it is something that makes sense for me to do, to strap bombs to my body and walk into a masjid where Muslims are praying the Jummah prayer, went with the idea that they are going to simply worship their God, and it's okay for me to kill them because they're Shia. How do you get to a place where your mind actually allows for you to think these thoughts and then be moved to act on these thoughts? These are not people of taqwa, regardless of whatever claims somebody might say. The seat of consciousness is where it is that we breed ethics and virtue. Your stomach is not the place that's going to inculcate kindness and generosity. The sexual organs are not the place that are going to breed for you compassion and mercy. Patience, integrity, honesty, virtue. These are not things that become rooted in the physicality of your being. But taqwa, consciousness, becomes the seat of all virtue. If you have everyone move up, please, and you come in close. You have to want that for yourself. You have to want to not walk around just like an animal walks around. You want to have a presence of self that recognizes that the nafs that you are should not be the nafs al-amara, the one that is just commanded to do what is wrong, and it's taking the self in a way where consciousness is not yielded. The thing that makes you distinct from every other creature in creation is that you have intellect. You have the ability to choose, hence you are accountable for choices. And whether it's your body making your decision, your base desire making your decision, your heart making your decision, the decisions are still coming from you. So sit and breathe and say, I want it to come from the best part of me. Tawbah as a spiritual act in our tradition is about turning back to God. Adam alayhi salam does it right from the onset. He slips up, makes a mistake, and turns back to Allah. It's not meant to be this act that makes you feel disempowered. It's a spiritual act. If you can get to a place where your mind says, what I did is somehow greater than God's mercy, shaitan has you. And that's not indifference. That's not, oh, I'm just going to play games. But you fundamentally can get to a place where you actually believe what I have done is beyond forgiveness. That's not just giving you a perception of you, that's giving you a perception of who you believe your creator to be. Taqwa and tawbah have a relationship because tawbah is the mechanism that once I've fallen into a hole, tawbah is what brings me back. If I want to give a definition to what taqwa is in relation to this, if tawbah is what brings me out of the hole once I've fallen into it, taqwa is what tells me the hole is coming in the first place. It says, get ready. You don't want to fall in. You don't want to get down into that place. If you do, Allah tells us that He loves those who turn back to Him. But to precede it now with a wariness, a consciousness, a mindfulness, that's what taqwa is. That, hey, you're about to be really dumb and say something hurtful to somebody. Hey, you're about to lie. You're about to gossip. You're about to get into a space where the people you're hanging out with, they might bring you laughter, but they're going to bring you a lot of weakening to your heart in turn. That taqwa gets now increased and decreased. Ramadan is never about empty stomachs. It's about full hearts. And the mechanisms that we are now going to, that is the madrasa of Ramadan, is to be able to increase in these virtues that we then carry forward throughout the rest of the calendar year. Sabr in the Quran is quite often identified as fasting. This is what the Mufassirin say. You're increasing in sabr, resilience. Taqwa is aligned with these things. So there's a place to increase in it. The ironic thing is that it's an absence of consciousness that has us not yield the best that we can because it's happening organically. If I now just paid attention to it, I could tell myself I'd rather taste this always and not just for 30 days. So I stop the consumption of only the physical and I start to nourish what it is that is my celestial self. And the verse, it talks about the nafs looking to see what is putting forth. Because you elevate yourself now to a place where many of us oscillate. That is called the nafs al-lawama, the self-reproaching nafs. I disagree with some of my teachers when they define this or translate, because it loses nuance. Because it makes it sound like the nafs al-lawama is the self-deprecating nafs. You got to hate on yourself. That's not what it is. When you self-reproach, you look to see what you do well that you can do better, and what you don't do so well that you can improve upon. In order to do that, you recognize that spirituality and its growth necessitates areas of improvement. So there's some things that I do that are not good for me. Whether I admit it or not is my decision, but there's consequences to that behavior. But in order for you to know what you can do better, you also have to embrace the idea that there's certain things that you do that are good. So you don't have to hate on yourself. That's a tool of shaitan. The mode of enhancing that now is rooted in this place of taqwa. It does not have me walking around as if I believe in a God that's simply watching me, but a God that's watching over me. And I can now start to self-regulate and engage in a practice that is empowering. Regardless of your theological perspectives on Islam or your legalistic school that you follow or you don't, or you're religious or not, or whatever, there's not a person who says that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was anything other than innocent and free of sin. Nobody says that he was somebody that committed sin. And in our tradition, we are taught of a prophet who is innocent of these types of things, yet still engages in the practice of seeking forgiveness from God in his own words 70 times a day, 100 times a day. What is he doing? He's keeping himself in check. He's in a place where the voice that reflects says that, hey, maybe this is something that I could do better. Maybe this is something that I can improve upon. That consciousness is meant to yield now what we call in our spiritual tradition muhasabah, accounting, an inventory. You don't have to tear yourself down. You just have to know who it is that you are. You have lived with yourself every day of your life. There is nobody who has spent more time with you than you. And you engage now in a productive reflection that starts to give indication, again, in a consciousness that's not just something that is undefined, but within my presence of mind, do I believe that this is it? Or that there's something that's coming afterwards? I can't believe in your afterlife for you, just like you can't believe in mine for me. When you wake up in the day and you go to bed at night and everything that happens in between, what is it that's enhancing versus what is it that's diluting that vision? The realm of existence that we have is not just limited here. This is what secular thought does. It's not just about implicit or explicit absence of God from conversation. Secularism has you believe that this is it. There's nothing more, just this materialistic existence. That's where death becomes something to fear or to not discuss. And it can yield now a very nihilistic approach, because what's the point of it all? A lot of it doesn't make any sense unless you really believe that there's a day of judgment where all of the questions of why are answered and everything is made balanced. And you believe in something that comes after this. Ramadan is about waking that part of you up, getting to a place of not just lip service, or not just something that's surface level, or not just something that goes in one ear or out the other, but I start to really govern what my convictions are, what my beliefs are, and how are they demonstrated in the actions that I undertake. Do you believe in an afterlife? And are you in and of itself evidence of that belief to you? And how do you find that? Based off of how you treat people. How do you find that? Based off of the decisions you're making, what it is that you pursue. How can you really believe in an afterlife fully and you treat women the way that you do? Yell at kids that you've been blessed with. Be anything other than kind and merciful. What kind of akhirah is it that resonates in your heart through the choices and decisions that you are engaging in each and every day? Each one of you is in a formative period of your identity. And the curriculum that you get exposed to every day is rooted in a system that seeks to dilute the vision of your heart. It does not speak to you about what it is that nourishes the spirit or the soul. Look around you and see who is present and also who is absent, and not in a judgmental way, but in a way that says that what is it that's taking somebody else away from a moment that's meant to be spiritually invigorating? What role do I play in helping somebody to come to spaces that illuminate oneself inwardly and outwardly? Gatherings that we believe that angels are descending upon. May Allah make this amongst them. But that awareness, that consciousness, it really easily escapes most of us. And ours is a system that has mindfulness that is attached to morality and ethics. The seat of virtue in your being is your taqwa. So when you fast, you want to fast in a way where it yields you an increase in taqwa. When you listen to, recite, hear that Quran in that month that's coming, do so with a multiplicity of intention, inclusive of an intention that says, I want this to help increase me in taqwa. When you make dua, every prayer, don't miss any of them in Sha'ban. Make it your goal. You turn to God and you say that, Ya Rabb, make me from the muttaqeen. Not because I'm trying to distance myself from people or make myself feel elevated by denigrating somebody else. If you are truly from the muttaqeen, it's going to make you a means of help for people, not a means for separation. The hadith that says the person who goes out to seek knowledge has even the fish in the seas make dua for them. The people who comment on this hadith, the shuyukh and scholars of generations, they say that those fish are making dua for that person because they know that the knowledge that person is going to acquire is going to even help them as fish in the sea. That's what kind of Islam you want to start to practice. Not one that gets regulated to a stairwell that I have to hide myself in prayer. Because I'm worried about what a supremacist patriarchal society is going to think of me. So I just bang out some rak'ahs at the end of the night when I get home. But you start to regain control of your inner self. You start to really sit down and just think, like, what am I working towards in actuality? What is it that I'm in pursuit of? And what is it that makes decisions for me? If you look at your literal being, your higher self is where your heart and your mind is. Your lower self is where your stomach and sexual organs are. You want to appeal to the higher self, not the lower self. Sha'ban is a gift, just as every day is a gift that helps to ready for what comes in the form of this amazing gift that is Ramadan. So make this one in part about increasing that awareness. It might mean that you have to let go of certain things and just own up to that. You're not meant to be like a beast that people are afraid of your bite. Our Prophet has narrations that vividly describe just how beautiful his smile was and what it sounded like when he laughed, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're not meant to be like the cattle, the Quran says, you just don't eat and drink and that's it, all day and all night. You're meant to be human and embrace the verse that says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that there's nobility amongst the children of Adam. And that nobility is being able to now move from the nafs al-amara, the one that is just in control of you and commands you towards things that might give you temporary satisfaction, but in the long term is preventing you from real contentment. Nobility is distinct from dignity. Your nobility is now being able to consciously move to being within that nafs al-lawama phase. I want to be better. I want to grow. I want to have good character. I want to treat people well. I want to have morals that guide my decision making and not how much money will be in a bank. So just assess for yourself. And you start to engage in that inventory. Is the person you are right now at this moment who you really think you potentially would want to be when you stand in front of Allah? Baligna Ramadan means that you might not make it. Our brothers and sisters who were murdered today in Peshawar, may Allah grant them peace and raise them amongst the shuhada, they're not going to see Ramadan. You have to recognize realities of what it is that's in front of you, to be able to draw meaning and to say, what's this all really about? And then how is everything that I indulge in a means that's going to draw me closer to a recognition of who it is that I am, who it is I can potentially be, and what it is that I'm really in pursuit of in terms of what's coming after this one. With a deep love for each and every one of you, you have to embrace fully the reality that is the existence of an akhirah. When you're trying to understand what your fast is about, it's not just about getting through a day and allowing for yourself to not eat or drink, but it's meant to bring you someplace. All of these other advices that come to us from our teachers, spiritual masters that tell you to avoid certain things, take it seriously. Because the engagement of gossiping while you fast is going to mess up your Ramadan. The commission of haram, it's going to impact your heart. The leaving behind of obligation, the chasing after prohibition. These are things that have spiritual consequences. And it's not just about the doing of it, but the looking down at somebody who struggles with it. You got to start to think in your head right now that I'm going to routinely build my schedule around something that prioritizes my inside. And in this month of Shaban, I'm going to clear out the clutter so that with the best part of me, I'm designing my life, because I understand if I'm not designing my life, somebody else is going to design it for me. But I still have to deal with the consequences of the decisions that I still decided upon. So you start to build into your routine right now something that says that I'm going to make sure that there's moments in every day and night of that blessed month that it's just me and Allah. Reflection, solitude, contemplation, volunteerism, charity, prayer, recitation, generosity, kindness, mercy, compassion. I'm going to make time for my inner self, because that's what this thing was given to me for. So that I can perhaps attain what that is of taqwa. And I can have an aspiration to say that the labels aside, the degrees aside, the credentials aside, what is it that's going to really make me shine? You want to be from the muttaqeen. May Allah make you and me from amongst them. It doesn't just happen without effort. And that effort can't be without strategy. So you start to bring definition to it. So again, one that might be a starting point for you. The way your stomach tells you it's hungry, the way your throat tells you when it's thirsty, the way your body gives you signs when it wants you to be aware of something. Tawbah is that means that when you fall in the hole, it's what brings you out of it. And taqwa is that mechanism that tells you, hey, the hole is in front of you. You want to stop falling down the metaphorical hole. You want to allow for yourself to be somebody who believes that they can actually reach the stars and can be elevated in that way, because you don't deserve anything less than that. You take these tools and you ponder upon them. And you say, if I'm not getting out of it what I'm intended to, what's really getting in the way? So that this coming month is something that yields for us, once we taste it, something that we wouldn't ever want to give up for any other reason. I've met people like this, man. People who, if you see them, every single part of their world, people on these streets would say, how can you possibly be happy? The types of people that I've seen sleeping in the prayer spaces of refugee camps. People who gave up their entire families, cradled their babies to their backs as they make tawaf around the Kaaba on their knees because they can't walk. Sleeping in the masjid because they can't afford the hotel. They have a contentment in their heart, which is what people of every generation of this religion have said. If the kings of this world knew the treasures that we possessed in here, they would wage battles to take that from us. What are you giving it up for? Is that really worth it? Ali radiallahu anh, he says that your hearts, your souls, they're equal to the price of paradise. So give them up for nothing less than that price. That's what Ramadan brings us back to. That awareness, that consciousness, that mindfulness. You start prepping yourself for it today so you can self-regulate and say that I have areas to improve. There's nothing wrong with that. My Prophet made istighfar multiple times a day. I grow and I see myself in my entirety. And I start to embed a frame of morality into that presence that I have, so that as I live each day in front of me, knowing full well that it might be one of the last, if not the last, I live it with no regret because I know I did my best and I saw everything through this prism that was taqwa. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. There's a lot of complexity that makes us what we are. And all I want you to think about today on this blessed day of Jummah is, what do you think is the current state of your heart and your soul? And not in a way that tears yourself down, but just try to really pay attention to it. Do the muhasabah. Look at your decisions of the last day, the last week, the last month, as an indication of how strong really is your heart in comparison to your nafs, of control of your being. There's so many things that we just don't know and can't explain. We all have similar physical makeups, But how is it that each one of you right now is thinking unique thoughts that no one else is thinking? How is it that you have your own personality, your own demeanor, you have your own attitude, you have your own reactions and responses to emotions? There's something within you that is not external to you, but within you that makes you who it is that you are. This Jummah, just spend some time thinking about what your relationship is with that part of you. And if it's where you want it to be. And if it's not, get on that. And if it is, think about how you can deepen it. Once you start recognizing that part of yourself, you're going to start recognizing and connecting to people around you through that part of them. So you're not going to just have bonds and relationships based off of how someone dresses or they don't dress, or whether they look like you, or eat the same foods, or speak the same language, or have the same skin complexion, or any of these kinds of things. You're going to start to see people in yourself the way that Allah sees you. Not by your bodies and your forms, but by your hearts and your deeds. And taqwa becomes the basis of all of that. It has the capacity to go up and go down. May Allah make us people of high taqwa. You start on this day of Jummah, where there's openings, metaphysical blessings unique to the rest of the week, so that you get out of it only the best, and you realize that what you're yielding is based off of what it is that you're putting into it in the first place. We have some dua requests and some announcements. We started to circulate information for the coming Ramadan. You saw probably a notice from the provost yesterday about NYU's religious holiday observances. As best as you can, if you are an undergrad, grad student, now is the time you want to start anticipating how you are planning your Ramadan out. So if you need accommodations, requests of professors, start getting it done now, and that's what we're here to help you. There's going to be iftar, inshallah, every night of Ramadan on this campus. There's going to be tarawih prayers for those of you who observe the Sunni tradition. There's going to be special qiyam programs in the last 10 nights led by Sheikh Fiaz Jafar for those of you who follow the Shia tradition. We're going to have other qiyams for the community on the whole, specific programs for women to have an overnight qiyam together. So many different ventures and fundraising opportunities to help people in need who have no food to eat, whether the sun is up or down, or a shelter to provide for them against inclement weather. So much to do, so start planning it now. And don't be in a place where you feel like you have to compromise on your religion in order to be a student here. Because it's not an either or, it's a both and. And we want to make sure that your experience is as best as it can be. And I would ask you as a favor to take advantage of the accommodations. Because whenever you decide to take an exam on the day of Eid, you're making it harder for somebody else to not take it because they want to observe the holiday. When you choose to say that I'm just going to give this up for myself, and I'm not saying it's easy, it can be hard and intimidating, but you lean on each other. And as a group, you say that we are together going to do this, so it sets precedent, so we don't have to worry about these things. And a lot of people worked really hard so that you don't have to feel bad about asking what it is that's rightfully yours. So take advantage of it, use it, and start to think about it from now, so that it's not in the night before the last 10 nights, you come to us and say, by the way, tomorrow I have a paper due, can you get me out of it? Does this make sense? You also anticipate being ready to help, facilitate, volunteering, as we have so many people are going to show up. So you start to ready your heart now so that when they come for the first time, you're the reason that they continue to come again and again and again. You start to be a part of that process communally, inshallah. As I mentioned during the khutbah, many of you likely heard the tragic news of a suicide bomb that took place in a Shia masjid in Peshawar, in Pakistan, where 56 people were killed during the time of the Jummah prayer. May Allah grant them peace and raise them amongst the shuhada. Please keep our brothers and sisters in your dua and recognize this, that when you engage in polemics, even as jokes, it's not funny. The same challenges we have in anti-Blackness, the same privileges that are afforded to those who come from a majority background. Many of you who are Sunni don't ever have to worry about what the experience will be like when you walk in a space, because it's going to cater to you by default. So where you can, turn to one of your Shia brothers and sisters today, ask them what this feels like and just listen. This is not something that you're going to have to necessarily experience in the same way. And that's what privilege is. You don't have to deal with it the way other minority communities do. But you're Muslim. You remember who your teacher is, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you don't take your standards from a supremacist society. You follow the sunnah and you exert mercy and kindness and compassion. So you go and check in on somebody and you say that, I heard this happen today. Are you doing okay? Is there anything that you need? Our brother Muthanna Nasser, who many of you have probably been to the Yemeni Cafe in Brooklyn. He's the owner of it, elder Yemeni brother. He passed away recently. A close relative of Hafiza Mughal, who's one of our students here. Fahmida Khan Qasuri passed away in Pakistan. Zafar al-Haq Muzaffar, who's the grandfather of Mehad Muzaffar from the NYU class of 2017, passed as well. And Khalil Murawaj, who was from the class of 2013, he was requesting prayers for his cousin Mahmoud, who passed. We make dua for all of our brothers and sisters. Allah grants them peace, entrance into Jannah without any judgment, brings ease to the hearts of their loved ones, gives them the best of reunions in the world beyond this one. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi, if our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here, only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Increase us in courage, compassion, and confidence. Protect us from any affliction, anxiety, or anguish. Remove from our hearts any feelings of bitterness, jealousy, animosity, or envy towards any of your creation. Grant us hearts that are filled with understanding and hope. Hearts that are drawn towards things of real goodness and beauty. Hearts that are deep in your remembrance, for indeed in your remembrance do hearts find rest. Help each one of us, Ya Rabbi, to use this blessed month of Sha'ban as a means of preparation to meet the month of Ramadan as best as we can. Make each one of us and our loved ones from amongst those who are blessed to meet that month of Ramadan and take from it in ways that only uniquely it offers. Increase us, Ya Allah, in our taqwa. Increase us in our iman and our faith. Make us from the best of your righteous servants and forgive us for any mistakes that we make knowingly or unknowingly. Put barakah into the studies of all of these young people, Ya Rab. For those who have examinations today, our students who are on a pre-med track that will be taking an exam after this Jummah prayer. For those who have papers that they are writing, for those that have papers they should be writing and they're still not writing them. For those who have anything that they are dealing with in terms of difficulty or trial. Give all of these students here only the best in this world and the best in the next. Open their hearts to one another, Ya Allah, so they can really embrace each other as brothers and sisters. And they can see that this unique moment in and of itself is an opportunity for them to gain and recognize the true depth of this religion. Make them those who are connected at the level of their hearts, Ya Rabbi, and not those who are connected only at the level of their forms, their bodies. Make them the reason that we have hope in this world, and never the reason that we might dread it. And help each one of them to see themselves how it is that you see them, to see their goodness, their inherent beauty, and to empower and elevate them through that, so that they can leave this world in a better place than which they found it, even if it is only little. Protect all of us, Ya Rab, from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
And diamond, la ilaha illallah. Strain your line shoulder to shoulder, inshallah. Fill the gaps. Verily, the formation of your sufuf is part of your salah. Keep in mind you're standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so praise if this is your last prayer, inshallah. If you line up the back of your heels instead of the front of your toes, the rows will be straighter. The mechanics to the prayer, even if they seem tedious, they're spiritual prescriptions. So to do them as they're prescribed just helps to elevate the barakah of the gathering. So as best as you can, try to keep the rows straight. Part of the prayer's mechanics. Allah accept from us.